Hello, my name is Elijah, and welcome to my podcast, Songwriting for Songwriters. This podcast is all about celebrating the art form of songwriting. I talk to special songwriting guests, producers, and artists about songwriting, making records, and how music shapes artists' creative visions. My aim is to create a resource library of conversations with some of the most successful songwriters, legendary artists, cult heroes, game changers, and my own personal heroes and influences to inspire you, the songwriter or music fan. As a songwriter myself, me and my guests go deeper into the creative activity we love the most and which we are all obsessed by, songwriting. You can also get yourself a copy of my book, The Songwriter's Handbook, from Amazon, in paperback form or on Kindle, which is filled with 52 songwriting challenges and themes to help you find a spark or seed of an idea for your next song, or if you've never written a song before, for your very first. The theme music for this episode and this season is a track called Wake of the Dawn by my band The Gravity Drive. You can find that track on all streaming platforms and also from thegravitydrive.com, taken from the album The Wild Light. My very special guest today is Rick Witter, enigmatic frontman and co-writer of the legendary indie alternative band Shed 7. Shed 7 formed in the early 90s and have recently scored 2 number 1 albums in the same year and have a huge back catalogue including 15 top 40 singles, including the mega songs Chasing Rainbows and Going for Gold. Rick and the band are currently enjoying riding a new wave of well-deserved success, in part earned through their passionate live performances, their loyal replenishing fan base, staying true to themselves and their commitment to writing new songs and not resting on their laurels. So please do follow, like, subscribe to the podcast, check out all the links to Rick Witter's band Shed 7 and everything they're doing, and get in touch if you've got a guest you'd like to recommend. Thank you very much for listening. Joining me today on the Songwriting for Songwriters podcast is the legendary frontman and songwriter of Shed 7, Rick Witter. How are you, Rick?
Hello, mate. How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good. How's life with you?
It's good, thank you. And funnily enough, I'm deep in the songwriting mode as we speak.
Fantastic. So new albums coming?
Yes. So we have the kind of plans, but obviously we've got to come up with the goods first. So if all goes to plan, we'll be recording later on this year to hopefully release beginning of next year.
Fantastic. Will you be working with youth again for that project, do you think?
Not sure yet. All that's up in the air. As I say, you know, we're about halfway through the writing sessions, so we're kind of seeing where it's taking us, and then we'll start deciding these kind of things when we get a little bit nearer the finishing line.
Fabulous. So actually, one of my questions was, within Shed 7, how does songwriting happen for you guys?
Well, it's never really changed, to be fair. I mean, me and Paul met when we were 11.
Amazing.
When we started Big School, and we kind of bonded over a love of music, to the point where when we were about 12, we were kind of in each other's bedrooms, drawing record sleeves for the songs that we'd yet to write. You know, we were kind of that anal about it, really, in that respect. So we've always, at the end of the day, basically, he throws some type of riff at me, or a set of chords, and I'll take it away and put a melody over the top of it and then start piecing some words to that. And that's been happening since we were about 12 or 13 years old, really. I mean, lots of bands do kind of veer off and try and be a bit more experimental, but we've always just felt that a good song is a good song. And certainly now, being in our 50s, you know, we just feel that if you're a fan of what we do, you're going to like what you're going to hear, you know.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really deep relationship, isn't it? I grew up writing songs in my house. My brother's a drummer, so I know what it's like. And, you know, my boyhood friends were sort of my bandmates.
Yeah.
So I know how deep that early relationship is. But when you've done it and now you're in your 50s, how important is that kind of bond between the two of you?
Well, it's instinctive, really. We just know, you know, I mean, obviously through the years, you go through your ups and downs, and certainly in the 90s when we started getting some success, you know, the whole of Shed 7 have big egos, so everyone wants to have the last say and everyone wants to put their 2 pennyworth in, understandably so. But I think the older that you get, the more you realise that it's less important, and the actual end product is key. So, you know, we find ourselves now in a position where we can read each other like a book, really.
Yeah.
So we know when something's working. It's really weird with me and Paul because if if a brand new idea isn't working pretty much immediately, it's put to one side and we start on the next thing, and and that hardly ever happens. Weirdly,
Mm.
most of the songs that we write end up becoming a Shed Seven song.
Yeah.
So we don't find ourselves usually with a big backlog of ideas sat on a shelf. You do read that a lot of bands say that we're going to go and start writing songs for a new album, and they end up saying we had 60 ideas and we had to whittle that down to 12 for an album. But usually we'll write about 14 or 15 songs, and then we know which 12 will be on the album.
Yeah, that's a good thing, that really, isn't it? Because I think within that relationship of knowing each other and being instinctive, you've got a quality control between the two of you where you haven't got 80 ideas. It's like we're going for gold, literally. So,
Yeah.
we sort of know how to do this. So we're going to go, if it's not working, rarely we'll ditch it. But actually, we're looking to write a great song from the off, right?
Yeah, totally that. I mean, we just instinctively know if something's going to work, and then
Yeah.
we just build upon that. And we're very lucky like that, really, because 9 times out of 10 that does happen. But weirdly enough, the last studio album we had was called A Matter of Time.
Yeah.
And there was a riff that Paul sent me probably way back in 2015
Yeah.
that I just at the time I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't getting where we could take this, so it was shelved and put into my saved emails. And then when we started writing for A Matter of Time in maybe 2023, I just happened to stumble across this riff, and that turned into Talk of the Town, which was one of the big songs off the last album. So again, it's almost like you're grabbing into thin air and just grabbing something and taking it and making it your own. So
It's interesting that because I had the same thing of a riff I wrote when I literally remember being in like a school classroom writing a riff and going, oh, I love that riff. And 15 years later, I wrote a song around it. And sometimes those things just stick around, don't they? It's
yeah,
the right
that,
time.
yeah, totally. That it's the right time and the right place, and sometimes it's. I think this is the point I'm trying to make. If you're struggling over
Yeah.
something, it's quite clearly not the time to do it. And some things are lost forever, and other things just take a few years just to kind of hone itself, really.
That's a really good point. I think you're talking about like flow state, really, aren't you? It's like if it's flowing, it's kind of like it's happening.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's been maybe small double figures of songs over our career that we've had to kind of invest. But weirdly, the bigger songs that we've written are very quick. I mean,
Yeah.
Chasing Rainbows, for example, was
Yeah.
probably the core of that song was written in about 20 minutes.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And, it's almost like it's taken over and you're just there as some type of conduit to make it become a reality.
Do you think that's, I mean, I have a very similar experience. I haven't had big songs like you, but like, I do think the way you've just described that is like being a conduit. My own experience is like I can sit down and write a song, and it's like to some extent because you've learned how to write songs and studied the masters, you can write a song. But when something comes through like it's something else. So I was going to ask you, do you believe in the muse? What do you think it is? How does it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just such a weird phenomenon, really. I mean, as I say, sometimes it becomes real work because you're trying to piece these bits of music that are in your head together to make it a whole. But yeah, I mean, the ones that just come at you, it's otherworldly. It's very difficult to explain because I mean, again, going back to the A Matter of Time album, we started writing some new songs, not knowing where it might take us.
Hmm.
I spent most of 2022, 2023 on my settee at home, and all of these ideas are just flooding out. Funnily enough, I was having my kitchen redone at the time, so there was people downstairs creating a lot of noise and a lot of mess and wanting cups of tea every 2 minutes. And there was something there. It was weird. It was like we just knew something good was coming over the horizon, and it
Yeah.
just seemed to flow and without much. I don't want to say without much thought because a lot of thought goes into it, but
Yeah.
it just felt very easy, you
Yeah.
know. the even lyrically, the next lines seem to flow really easily without overthinking things, because that's one of the pitfalls of trying to write good music is overthinking.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, I mean, we're as I say, we're in the process of writing new material now, and because of the recent success we've had, it could become a bit more difficult because you're kind of trying to keep on that treadmill of having good success, and you start maybe doubting, is this good enough?
Right.
And luckily so far so good with us. We've come up with about 8 songs that I believe will be on the next Shed 7 album. And obviously you've got to go in the studio, and that changes everything again. But as
Yeah.
a core song, I think we're almost there with it, which is amazing. You
Does
know,
does like you interesting point you made there? Does success bring pressure to songwriting?
well, I mean, we've been going so long, and we've been releasing records and having chart success for 1994. I think that started. So quite a long time ago. So no, our songwriting process, as I've touched upon already, we don't really sit down and plan anything or think of a direction we might want to go in. We just write songs, and then when we've got a batch of songs, we then decide which ones are good enough,
Yeah.
which ones potentially might be a single, which one isn't as good as the others, and perhaps will be a bonus track on an extra CD or whatever it might be. So we don't ever overthink it, and I think that maybe takes the pressure off slightly.
Yeah.
But we just know when we know if we've written something that we think is good enough and we're proud enough to be able to share with everybody else. And if it ever became a time where we weren't coming up with those goods, then we just don't release anything. It's as simple as that, really.
I love how pure that sounds because it still sounds like you guys are like writing like a new band because that's exactly what you do as a new band, isn't it? You write songs, and if you believe in them, you play them, and if you believe in them, you release them. It's that simple, you know.
Well, you've touched upon something that's so true there. I mean, with a matter of time, we'd come out of COVID. We'd all been through a little bit of a weird time in everybody's lives, and a lot of those songs off that last studio album are kind of positive, or they're about travel.
Yeah,
They're about just getting out there. It's about having a good time. So I think life spills into this, but subconsciously in a lot of ways. I mean, just going back to the 90s, we got to the point where we'd released 3 studio albums, and then the record label decided it was time for a greatest hits, and
mm,
we were a bit kind of, well, is this too soon in our career? We've only had 3 studio albums. But I guess we had quite a few hits, so it wasn't like we were just throwing out a greatest hits with 3 big songs on and the rest are kind of fodder filler.
yeah,
The whole album was full of chart hits.
yeah,
But the difference there is the record label wanted us to write 2 brand new songs to put on a greatest hits album to help sell it. So you're basically being told by somebody that you don't really know to write 2 hits, and
yeah, yeah.
again, you don't do that. That's not how an artist goes about the business. You don't sit down and think, right, we need to write a hit. But luckily we came up with the goods and wrote Disco Down and High Hopes,
Yeah.
which at that time was quite a big thing to do. But then you get to the point where when we parted ways with our major label at the end of the 90s, we signed to a smaller independent label, and we were told, you've had a lot of chart hits and we want that success via you. So there you go, come up with the goods. And I think at the beginning of the noughties, when certainly Britpop and guitar music in that ilk was kind of going out of fashion,
Mm,
it put a lot more pressure on.
yeah, sure.
And I did find myself writing new songs, and before I'd even kind of sorted out how the verse might go, I'm questioning whether or not it's catchy enough and chart potential enough for this independent label. And you
Mm.
can't work like that. It's not, you don't write to order.
No, it's just, I
So
mean, it's one of those things that I think label people just don't. It's a strange thing because I think a good label is a great thing, but like sometimes even when there are labels of success, they will still say things which are just batshit crazy for a creative to hear. You know, it's just
Mm,
like drop all your influences and change your style, and this is the new thing. It's like, are you literally mental? It's kind of
mm. Well, there you go, and it's pound signs. That's at the end of the day.
absolutely.
All it is. It's just total pound signs. It's what how much you can sell for us, you know. But then you've got to have a bit of artistic credibility, and you know, I'm really pleased with our career because I can look back and hold my head up, and just as equally look to the future that looks very bright for us. You know, I mean, as I say, we're a band that's been going on for a long, long time, and we've always been very lucky with our fan base. We've got quite a big fan base who always comes out to see us perform these songs live, and it's just a thrill now for us because I feel like we're kind of relevant again after
Yeah.
after kind of such a long gap in between studio albums. I think it was something like 16 years with
Wow.
between new releases, and now to be able to go out and play some songs from the 90s that we did and incorporate brand new songs into that set
Yeah.
that's kind of stand up to our past. You know, it's not like we're playing some big 90s hits and then going, oh, here's a new one, and it just doesn't fit. It's weird how these newer songs fit with our past. So, you know, for me, that just opens up a whole new avenue for us, you know.
I mean, that's massive because I mean that comes down to confidence, talent, and the longevity of the band, doesn't it? Were you
Yeah.
writing in that 16 year period where between albums? Were you still songwriting?
No, no. So we had no intention to for a while. We found ourselves kind of almost becoming a bit of a nostalgia act in the sense that we all kind of had different projects on the go, different kind of things. I was going out doing a lot of DJing. Paul had started his own video company, so everyone was kind of busy doing other things, and we kind of kept getting together every other year and doing a huge UK tour just because we missed playing live. You know, that was we just loved the idea of getting together and playing live, and we were lucky because we had a huge back catalogue that we could dip into, and we just found ourselves for probably 10, 12 years just going out there and playing our past. But the lucky thing for us was we're very good at playing live, and we kept selling out gigs, and people were coming along. People in 2015 were coming along and hearing songs from 1995 and singing their hearts out and looking like they were having the best night out. So obviously what we did do in the 90s did mean something to people.
Massively, massively. I mean, I was one of those kids. I remember like, when Maximum High came out, man. I listened to that album and your other albums so much, man. It was that informative for my songwriting. And just, I mean, I listened to it over the last few days, knowing I was going to speak to you. It's like, man, it's just like song after song after song, like melody after melody, just like great stuff. And I remember about a year ago actually hearing Chasing Rainbows on the radio and just not, when I was just shopping or something
Yeah.
and didn't quite tune into who it was that was the song was by. And then I was like, this is absolutely like enormous. This hit is, this is one of my favorite songs. It's a massive hit. And I was like, Shed 7, bloody hell, like so many hits. How does it feel to have created songs which are staples in the kind of British culture? They are big songs. They are like repeated on radio. There's soundtrack people's lives, and you and Paul are there writing them in the bedroom. The band are playing them live, but you have got a load of tunes which are in the national kind of identity, if you like, musically. How's that feel?
Yeah, well, it is amazing, but we don't really overthink things like that because you
Yeah,
can go right up your own arse.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
I mean, I think weirdly, I think it's always looking forward. I just want that again. I want more of that, please. You know what I mean? I don't want that to stop, which is, again, harking back to what we were talking about. It's important to only release things that you're really happy with and
Absolutely
you're
right.
proud of other people hearing.
Yeah,
But, we're not kind of, we're not cutting that mold of sitting on our laurels and just going, yeah, we did that. It's what can we do next that
love
really
that.
kind of keeps me going.
I love
Uh,
that.
and I do love the fact that people will. I mean, it's weird because it seems to have taken a few years for that to become a thing in the sense of certainly a chasing rainbows. I mean, it's always been a big song for us, but we notice more and more, especially when we go out and play live, that I mean, people are in tears listening to it.
Mm,
People say that it was the first dance or it was played at somebody's funeral, and that's such a thrill to know that something that you wrote so long ago and you had your own reasons behind it, as
Yeah.
connected with a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, and to be fair, since I was 13 or 14, it's all I've ever wanted to do. And all I kind of, certainly as a young kid, I just wanted to kind of feel like I might leave a mark on the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And something's left when I'm long gone. And I can feel really proud of the fact that that appears to be the case.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why when we released our first album, Change Giver, the very first single we released was called Mark. And it's not about some chap, it's about leaving your mark forever. You know, it's all. I was thinking, if we only ever release one 7-inch single, I want it to be that, because I've left my mark forever, you know. But then luckily, so many years on, we're still here doing it.
Do you think there's been like of late, obviously there's like, there's time periods where in the 90s people were reflecting back on the 60s. We've had quite a long period of the 80s being a thing. So there is that kind of wheel that's turning back round to sort of the 90s at the moment where, I've got a daughter who's 21, they're listening to music from the 90s. There's that kind of thing going on. So there's like the wheels turning in a reflection point back to that period of time, fashion wise and sort of music and all the rest of it. Obviously big bands have got back together, all the rest of it. But
Yeah.
do you think there's like, so that naturally happens, but there is like an energy in a lot of that 90s music and literally just great songwriting. And, from my reflection point, there's been, some really great artists in the last 10, 15 years, but it's a bit like songwriting or melodies have, and like 15 songwriters writing a song and all the rest of it. It's slightly got watered down, which is kind of the influence behind this podcast, is to speak to great songwriters who write on their own or write with another couple of people and just celebrate the art form. So do you think that kind of like thing that's happening now, which is, really a sort of praise of songwriting, a love of songwriting in the 90s coming back in, do you think, what do you think is behind that? Do you have any reflections on that yourself?
Well, I mean, I could talk about us personally and say that we could have been, me and Paul could have been born in any era and still be just doing what we do. And I say that in the sense that obviously we arrived at a time that became known as Britpop. So obviously you kind of slightly pigeonholed in that respect. But then at the same time, as you say, the 90s were kind of so vibrant and so I think the way that the industry has totally changed since the 90s, that a lot of people who are kind of our age or slightly younger remember that period because it'll never happen again. Excuse me, the fact that there's so many different charts these days means that you'll never get a newsreader at 10 o'clock at night saying which one of these two bands are going to end up at number one. That's never going to happen again. No. So I think people love a little bit of nostalgia in that respect. But what I notice is the people who are our age or younger who were coming to see us in the 90s are now coming with their kids.
Yeah.
Who are at an age where they've obviously been at home a lot, listening to their parents, listening to music, and just wholesale getting into it. Yeah. So we'll see 8, 10, 12, 14-year-olds come in and they're singing every word at the front. And it's an amazing thing because that does mean that hopefully they'll stick around and keep coming and, we'll never stop.
You make a good point there. You getting better, that tune. If you release that in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, and today, that's a fucking great song. In any,
well, thank you.
And it's not stuck to 90s. It's like that's massive. Or loads of your songs, but just on reflection.
Yeah, and that's what I mean in the respects that some bands are of a time, you know what I mean? And that, again, that's any decade you could care to mention. They're just of a time, and you can hear that time. If you go, certainly in the 80s, there's so many 80s bands that you just go 80s. Whereas, as I say, we could have appeared in any time frame and just be doing what we do. So as much as we are Britpop in the sense that we're British and we play an element of pop music,
you're not defined by an age or
no, I don't think we are, and I think we're proving it now with the new material. I mean, we had a new album in 2017 called Instant Pleasures, and that kind of, you could sense that was us reappearing after 16 years, but still we had Better Days off that album. We had Room in Your House. We had quite a lot of big songs on that album, and I remember when in this time frame of about 16 years where we were just literally going out and playing our old songs live, a lot of our fans kept saying online, will you ever write anything new? They were obviously hankering after something new.
Brilliant.
And then when we did write a set of new songs and announced that we had, I could almost sense a bit of fear in our fans because they were hoping that it was going to be good. They're doing what we want them to do, but oh my God, is it going to actually be any good? Is it going to be embarrassing because they're older men and they've not done it for so long? So it was amazing when we released that album, Instant Pleasures, and got such good feedback off it. I think there was a sense of almost relief by our fans that we could still do it. And then I think A Matter of Time, which came after that, was a more compact Shed 7 album because we'd done the new We're Back Again.
Yeah.
So you can almost sense, if you put A Matter of Time on, it's almost like you can hear a young band, like you said earlier. It's like we're not at late 40s, or early 50s. We sounded like a new band.
Well, interesting because your sound has always sounded to me, anyways, like urgent, anthemic, energetic. This melodies are always massively strong, great lyrics. What are your like songwriting? Who are your songwriting influences?
Well, a massive fan of the Smiths when they were around, or to be fair, I was slightly too young when they started to get into them, but towards the end of their career, and then obviously moving on, I'm a massive fan of the Smiths. A huge fan of the Stones and the Beatles. But then I was always a big indie kid, so I was listening to things like the Soup Dragons.
Yeah.
But before the Soup Dragons went baggy and did I'm Free by the Stones, before all of that, if you listen to the first Soup Dragons album, it's called This Is Our Art, and it was just real good upbeat pop.
Yeah.
And then the Stone Roses came along, and they kind of really changed the mentality for a lot of people. We were in school bands. Me, Paul, and Tom out of Shed 7, we were in school bands together. We were playing in pubs when we were 14, and we were heavily influenced at that point by bands like the House Martins and the Smiths.
Yeah.
But we weren't taking it over seriously. We were just enjoying being young and playing gigs because that's what you do. You learn a guitar and you put it over your shoulder because you want to go out and show off and show people that you can do it. That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah.
And me swinging my hip. I'm 15 years old and I'm swinging my hips at the Arts Centre in York. But, we used to get quite a big crowd even then. But then when the Stone Roses album appeared, we were late teens and we heard that and thought, wow, this is a game changer. We need to pull our socks up. So thank you, Stone Roses, because they were a big influence in that respect. Yeah, and that's what made us change our band name. It's what made us start to become a little bit more savvy and aware and melodic, So they were a big influence. And weirdly enough, a couple of weeks ago, we've ended up writing a song that is kind of like a love letter to the Stone Roses, which is great, actually, because bands don't usually do that.
Yeah.
Write a love letter to another band. So fingers crossed when we go in the studio, we can make that sound as good as it possibly can. And
that's cool. That's really cool.
It's funny because a lot of people, if they wouldn't know that, would just think it's a love song, but it's actually a love song to another band, which is quite a cool thing to do, I think.
I think it's a great thing to do. Actually, let me just ask you, the name Shed 7, I should have looked this up, but like, where does that come from?
So that's funny because in the 90s, when we were having quite a lot of success, it was the first question I was asked at pretty much every interview we ever did. And I'm thinking, hold on a minute, I've said this so many times. If you don't know by now, then why are you even interested? But I'm not saying that about you. I'm saying that's what happened in the 90s. To be fair, we were desperate for a band name because I think we had a gig we needed to do and we needed to advertise the fact that we'd kind of changed. Me and Tom, the bass player, were getting a train from York to Manchester to go to Affleck's Palace, I think, in the very, very early 90s. And we were struggling for a band name. We were coming up with different ideas. And I believe we were coming out of Leeds train station going towards Manchester. and there was 10 huge sheds, train sheds lined up, pretty browbeaten, and they had huge doors on them, and each one said shed 1, shed 2, shed 3, but shed 7 didn't have a door on it. It was the only one without a door, and
Right.
I said that must be shed 7.
Right.
And then we just had to, it's not the most glamorous of names. It's
Well,
got the word shed in it.
the reason I asked that is because, like, I have this thing sometimes where, like, if I don't know the answer to something, I prefer my mind just to think about it and don't research things. So in
Yeah.
my brain, Shed Seven was almost a bit like, the famous five, the Secret Seven. I was kind of like this, like Enid Blyton thing, and it was like, oh, they're the Shed Seven. They probably rehearse in the shed. So my brain.
Yeah.
I didn't want to know the answer. I was just like, that's in my brain. They're a gang that like rehearse in the shed, and they're the sheds. That's what.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I totally get it, and I think you get to the point where if you do start having a certain amount of success, I think the name,
Yeah.
it just becomes ingrained, and you don't really give it that much thought anyway, do you? I mean, simple minds, you don't really think about it; you just say it.
Can I ask?
But funnily enough, I think a lot of people, when we first started getting a bit of press attention, thought we were big Chelsea fans because I believe
Right.
one of the ends of the Chelsea stadium was called the Shed or something.
Okay. Cool. 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 Do you remember like your first song that you wrote and what it was called?
Yes, it was called The Creature of Dreams, and weirdly, we nearly took a little sample of it and put it on. We released like a posh greatest hits
Mm.
In 2024 called Liquid Gold,
Yeah.
and we revisited a lot of our old stuff and kind of re-envisaged it to what it would sound like if we'd written it now.
Yeah.
And one of the songs was off a Maximum High called Parallel Lines.
Yeah.
And we very, very nearly put a little segment of this demo that we recorded when we were 12 or 13
Right.
onto it, and I sound 12 or 13 on it. So it was called The Creature of Dreams.
Brilliant. 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 Do you have a fate? This is a weird question because I know as a songwriter myself that all our songs are like children, but do you have a particular song that is like your favorite or like a kind of one that you're most proud of?
Yeah, it's a tough one, that, and you've just hit the nail on the head, really. I mean, they're all kind of me and Paul, so it's very difficult to cherry pick in that respect. I mean, obviously, there's songs that are better than others, and that's why you have B-sides and extra tracks. But it's difficult. I mean, obviously, if you're playing live, then there's definitely going to be highlights, and one of them being Chasing Rainbows. I mean, we always play that song last at gigs. We've done that since time immemorial. And I think our fans or people who come to see us know that they're going to hear that last. And to the point now, when we do that live, we drop out at the end and let the crowd sing it round a few times, and then we crash back in, and it's a big crescendo at the end. That's always a massive moment. Um, but equally, I get a thrill out of playing album tracks live that you don't perhaps hear as much, and certainly throughout our songs is some quite lyrical couplets in there that are satisfying to sing. But yeah, it's difficult to actually say one song to you.
Because your band is so good live and it's like, it's a real band. When you've got a new tune, new song, I have this thing where like I can be as happy as I can be with a new song and with the band playing it inside rehearsals. But something else happens when you like baptize it live on stage, don't you? It's like, and it kind of needs to be released to a crowd, I think, in an audience. And you kind of also observe it happening, don't you? When you're kind of playing a new song live, it's almost like a ritualistic sort of
Mm.
baptism. Can you speak to that about like how you feel about playing a new song live?
Well, yeah, it's always edge of the seat stuff because you never know until it's out there in the wider domain if it's going to connect. So I mean, it's satisfying if you are playing a new song live and it does connect, but it's not an instant thing either. It takes a while for people to kind of to
Hmm.
get it. I mean, we know if we're writing something and we're rehearsing it to play it live, when you get that ooh moment, you just know within yourself. And I think we're very lucky that because what we know tends to transcend to others in that respect. But always, and I'm talking about any band here, if I hear a band and I instantly like a song, the chances are after 5 or 6 listens, I'm going to start getting a little bit bored of it. Whereas the songs that take a little bit of time will end up being a winner forever, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you know what's coming across here? Because I mean, I've spoken to lots of different songwriters, and every single person I speak to has, something slightly different to say and different. I have different observances. But what I love about what you're talking about is really there's a sense of like ownership and identity and instinct, and that the band know, and like you kind of between as you're writing and honing something, you're doing it for you, and and that's really important, I think, as a songwriter
Oh
to
yeah, we
develop
are.
your own identity.
You tell we are our biggest fans. You know, if we're in a studio and something good's brewing, we're all looking at each other, going, "Wow, yeah, this," and so we are our biggest fans, and it's amazing that even at this age, we can still connect that feeling with the wider public. Because a lot of bands, when they start getting into the 50s, they're either doing it just to tick something off, or they're not kind of socially aware enough that what they're doing is actually a load of old toss. We're kind of very, very clued into that, and we know we're very lucky because we could just go out and play our past. We could just keep doing that because people still come to see us doing it, but it's not good enough for us. We want to be in our 70s still releasing something that's vibrant and energetic and relevant. So hopefully that'll happen if we're still around.
I absolutely love that, and I also think that's a really important thing to put across to different songwriters and artists listening to this podcast, because, like you say, it's really so easy just to kind of to go out and do maximum high again and again and again and again, and all the
Mm.
classics again and again. But the urgency to write, it's the new song's the most exciting song, isn't it? Actually,
Oh, totally that, yeah, and it keeps you relevant as well, which is really important. I mean, it's I suppose if you are the biggest thrill for me is when you've recorded a set of new songs but nobody's heard them yet.
yes, yes,
I love. I'm not a big listener of Shed Seven in the respect that when we finish speaking, I won't put one of our albums on just for the hell of it. I'm too busy trying to write new stuff to be doing stuff like that. That's kind of what we've done. But when we've recorded and mixed and mastered something, and we've got 2 months to wait before anyone else gets to hear it,
yeah.
that's the biggest thrill to me. And I'll get some friends around and say, "Listen to this," and they'll get excited.
But it's that thing of like when it's that band thing where like you've got it's like a secret you've got that no one
Yeah,
knows about, and when that little moment is so great,
yeah, it's amazing because you know that you've got this little secret, and then as soon as it's released, it's not ours anymore. It's
No.
for everybody, and then that's the time to think, right, we need to start writing some new stuff.
So when
So,
you're
I,
in the,
in a lazy way, I love that kind of in between because I can just sit back and relax for a little bit without worrying about.
so when you're now writing, you're now writing another set of songs and starting to do all that. So
Yeah.
when that process is happening, are you presumably there's like all different songs coming up, different things to work on. Are you then like writing all the time in your mind? Is that a constant sort of thing happening for you?
Oh, without a doubt, it
Yeah.
takes over every single thing. It just takes over. I can be out with my family and doing something really good, but I'm constantly jotting things down that have just come into my head so I don't forget them. I mean, the notes on my phone are ridiculous. There's just
Yeah.
so many lyrical couplets in there, and obviously you can't say to your family, right, I've got to do this now. We're on a roller coaster. You know what I mean? You can't do that. So I have to jot these things down, and then at some point in the future, what I might have thought of 3 months ago is suddenly just really within what I'm thinking of now.
Yeah.
I mean, I wake up in the night, and if I don't jot it down, it's gone forever. Which is apparently what happened with "Satisfaction" by the Stones. Apparently, Keith Richards woke up in the night going dun, 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 and he said if I didn't record that on the guitar, it would have been gone forever.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing, really. But you have to train yourself,
Yep.
and you have to kind of know when to kind of slow down or stop for a little bit as well. It's really it can be a struggle because it's not a tap. You can't just go, right, I'm going to write a song today. It
I
doesn't
think
work like that.
that's really interesting actually, because I went to art college, and one of the things that art college said to me, with this guy, a lecturer, just went, if you're choosing to be an artist, and so that's for me, like art, music, film, photography, whatever, you're choosing this as a life path and you commit to it every day. That doesn't mean you write every day.
Mm.
It means you're committing to your own kind of like a martial artist or something. You're committed to your own sort of growth or journey or within songwriting. And so when you're talking about training yourself as a songwriter, I think that's a really interesting thing because I had a kid at 21. Suddenly I realized that I haven't got 8 hours a day to write songs. So I'm going to have to do this differently and train myself in a different way. And it's the same thing you're speaking about with family. Like you can't get a song out now on a roller coaster, but you can make a note because you're actually constantly chipping away at the kind of palette of inspirations that you're bringing, which may or may not be released later. But what you're talking about really is commitment to yourself and your songwriting as an artist all the time, right?
Oh, without a doubt that, yeah, because as I say, you can't wake up and think, right, I'm going to write a song today, and then you can end up sitting there with your notebook and maybe some type of riff or a few chords. I mean, melodies weirdly are quite easy.
Yes.
If Paul sends me something, almost immediately I've got a melody in my head, and it's usually a winner.
Yeah.
Again, if he sends something and I'm struggling with a melody, you that's the point where you think, right, I'm not going to struggle with that. Move that or move on.
Yeah.
So but certainly lyrically, you can't just suddenly have it. So as I say, it could maybe be 3 or 4 months or even years where a lyric will fit against that melody that you wanted, and then off you go, you're running. But it's getting that kind. You've got to be in the right frame of mind. You've got to feel like you're being productive, and you know.
Also, it's also elusive though, isn't it? Like you can be within this training and being productive, like the kind of for me, and I think what you're saying as well, the lyrics as well, it's an elusive force, this. So like store it away, write it down, put it on a voice frame, but it's going to strike when it's going to strike. And it's
Mm.
you're kind of flirting with this kind of creative spirit all the time.
Well, this is exactly the point, and that's why you become a conduit. Really, you're just waiting for the songwriting gods to allow you to to be able to put it into some type of form and context and a real thing. There's so many. There's so many future songs out there that people will fall in love with, and they're just floating around above our heads. And it's up to certain people to just think, right, I'm grabbing that now and I'm going to make that a reality. And I'm hopeful that attitude will never stop with me. I can't ever see it stopping because I've
It
been
doesn't
doing
sound
it.
like it's ever going to stop, and that's a beautiful thing.
Well, I've been doing it since I was about 12, so I
Yeah,
can't see it stopping. Yeah.
well, so given the fact the industry's changed so much and all the rest of it, blah blah blah, streaming and all the thing. If there's like a 12-year-old boy or girl sitting in a bedroom now, with a guitar or piano or whatever, what direct songwriting advice or music industry advice would you give to that kid?
Well, I'd just say if you feel like it's in you, just keep chipping away. Don't. If you have a few bad days, don't let that define where your future goes. Just believe in yourself, and if you take it seriously enough, good things will happen. I mean, we are the prime example of that in the respect that, in the 90s, we had a bit of a bad time with press. We weren't very credible. We weren't very cool. But we just stuck to our guns and did what we felt was right. Even down to the point of being an unsigned band in the early 90s, but no, we're from York, which is a kind of a small city, and it's not renowned for being a music city. But we didn't let that deter us. And when we started to get a little bit of interest outside of York, we'd find ourselves doing gigs in London, and that would involve hiring a minibus, getting a friend to drive us, which was probably a 5.5 hour journey to London, and then we'd arrive late afternoon, set up our gear, and play in front of 4 or 5 people in a pub in London, and then we'd pack it down and drive 5.5 hours back with snare drums on our laps.
Yeah.
But at no point did we think, well, this is rubbish, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
We just think people are missing out here and people should be hearing it. So it's that self-belief,
Yeah.
and it's funny because we ended up having two number ones in 2024,
Yeah.
which is only ever happened 19 times before us,
Wow.
ever. So, and a lot of people in the 90s would have laughed you out of the room if you'd have said that's going to happen to that band in that year. So, I was saying in interviews when that happened that we should be on school curriculums, don't never give up, self-belief,
Yeah.
positive attitude,
Yeah.
never say die, and anything could happen.
100%.
12-year-olds should be being told that.
Love that. I love that. It's such, I mean, self-belief, so important, so important. Just a couple of last questions for you. Talk to me about the role of how a producer can change or impact the songwriting when you're coming to make a record.
Well, very important. I mean, to be fair, in the 90s, we we were a kind of a little bit naughty in the 90s, and we probably had a bit too much self-belief and were probably too egotistical. And if we wrote a song and then an outside point of view came along, even if it was a producer within the music industry or even a record label A&R man having an opinion on it, we would probably have stuck to our guns a lot more than what we would do these days,
Okay.
and said, "Well, it's our song. What are you talking about? This is brilliant." So, regarding production in the 90s, I mean, we even used Stephen Street for the third album, and he didn't massively, if I remember rightly, bring too much to the party.
Okay.
Whereas when we worked with youth, it was totally different, but we were more of an age where we were more accepting. So he would maybe listen to a demo and he'd be kind of looking really confused, going, well, what's that? And why is that there? And he'd maybe say, well, that's good, but why don't you put that there instead of there? And why don't you make that bit a little bit longer and lose that bit because it's not working? And we were a lot more happy to have an outside opinion. And to be fair, it shows. So, for example, there's a song called Tripping With You on A Matter of Time.
Yeah.
And the idea I had, Paul sent me literally the verse acoustic guitar riff. And I wrote that verse that then carried on, and we had a little bit of a chorus. And I was thinking, how cool would this be if this was literally an acoustic guitar and me, and we put it in the middle of the album, say track 6 or track 7, and it's just literally that one verse and that chorus, and then it finishes. And it's just a nice little respite in the middle of the album.
Yeah.
And that was the idea when we went in the studio. And quite clearly, and I'm so pleased this did happen because it's such a catchy melody and the lyrics on it are really good, that it became a 6-minute behemoth.
Excellent. Excellent.
And that youth did have a lot of that involvement in that. And it was a pleasure to go through that process. And the outcome now is amazing. So I'm so pleased with that because I listened to that song with a totally different mindset.
So it's being open-minded, isn't it? At the right point in your career with the right person, it's like sort of being open-minded to see where something goes.
Yeah, and you learn all the time because then, I mean, I've always been, well, certainly early U2, I was a big fan when I was growing up. And then you kind of start reading about how they went about recording, and you realise that the production on U2 albums was massive with the producers.
Yeah.
And, Brian Eno got involved with them at one point, and a U2 album would have been totally different without him being there.
Yeah.
And then even with bands like Coldplay, there's lots and lots of production things going on there. I don't think Coldplay would sound like they do without whatever producers they've used. It's an interesting part, but you have to go with the flow with it, and you have to kind of almost let your children go to somebody else's party without you being there.
Very true. I mean, Brian, rumored to be working with you two again at the moment, so that should
Yes, so there you go. So
be
obviously
interesting.
there's a need for it. I mean, was it Daniel Lanois? Is that what it's called? Daniel
Right.
Lanois
Yeah,
with the Joshua Tree.
yeah,
All of that. It would have been a totally different album without that good production duty thing going on. So yes, so I think that again, weirdly, what we were talking about earlier with sounding like a new band or a youthful band with lots of vigor, you can hear that coming out of the speakers because I think when we were there recording it, I mean, we were literally, with a matter of time, we were in this studio in Spain for about 2.5, 3 weeks,
yeah,
and we weren't doing weekends, so we were literally recording a song a day.
yeah,
So it was get up, show him the song. He'd suggest changing bits. We'd discuss it. We'd go through it. We'd play it. And then by the end of that day, we had the majority of a brand new song. And it's like, wow. But then because you're moving on the next day, you forgot what you've done. So it's only when you come back and start the mixing process that you think, oh my God, what's just happened there? So you're just throwing everything into your performance in the studio
yeah.
because you're excited about what's coming next. And I think that really comes across in a matter of time.
Absolutely. And also, what's important there to me just came up was that if you're working in that way, which is fast, and the producer might be suggesting edits, I think as a songwriter or team of songwriters, what you've got to work that way, you've got to make sure that like your own bits, your melodies or the riffs or the words that you've written maybe before you get to the recording part are super solid and that it's representative of you so that those changes can happen, because there's situations where you can, if you're not sure of your stuff and then you're in the studio and someone's suggesting changes, it can kind of get very watered down or kind of like, become this sort of beast which isn't working. So what comes across from what you're saying is all along the way is just be solid and be pure and instinctive and sort of hold your own standard together.
Yeah, well, you've just got to be confident, you've got to be aware, and you've got to, as much as you've got to kind of know what's coming, there is also an element of a runaway train, and you're just holding on and you're just kind of clinging on and making sure you don't fall off. And that's why it becomes exciting.
Absolutely, and it's also important at any point in anyone's career, from day one, first band practice to day 10,000, excitement is a massive ingredient, isn't it? To have.
Yeah, totally, hugely so. And that's why, as I said earlier, towards the end of the 90s, when the period was becoming a little bit sodden and a little bit over amplified, and you going a little bit out of fashion, it's not so much fun. So, a career in music, you never know what's going to come around the corner with the changes and people's opinions on stuff. So I'm really pleased and thankful that as a 53-year-old man, we're still kind of doing it. We're clinging to the wreckage. We still love what we do. And I was always fearful that if things go a bit wrong and I'm in my late 20s, early 30s, that I might have to start wearing a uniform and do
Yeah,
something else. And I think I'm past that now, which is
I think
just
so.
amazing.
Brilliant, brilliant. One final question, and thank you so much for your time. I wanted to speak to you since this podcast, since I started doing it, and I'm a big fan of your song and your voice. Actually, I've got to say, um, your vocal sound, performance style. When I was learning to sing, kind of the because you've got a kind of style and swagger about your voice, but you've also got a phenomenally good voice, like you. So just
Well,
from
thank you.
songwriting and performing, as I was growing up, you were somebody that I definitely was studying.
Well, that's very, very kind of you to say, because I just do what I do. I don't really overthink it. I'm very lucky in that respect. But, equally, there'll be people out there who say I've got a foghorn. So thank you very much. It's very much appreciated.
No, not at all. So we're really looking forward to new music from you guys, and again, thank you for being on the podcast. This is the question that I ask every single guest. It's the last question, and obviously, listeners to this podcast, go and check out Shed Seven's new music and their back catalogue, and the social media is everywhere, so you can find them everywhere. But the last question is, If you could have written any song which isn't one of your songs from any period of time, which song do you wish you'd have written?
Well, I'm a big fan of the Hollies, "The Air That I Breathe." I think
Oh,
that's a lovely song. So that's one that I would have loved to have written. I love the sentiment. I love the rhythm. I love the angst and the heartfeltness.
that's a great answer, actually. And I can actually, what's interesting about this question is you can sometimes when people tell you what it is, you can kind of go, oh, as a songwriter, you can kind of go, oh, that's interesting, because I can kind of sort of glimpse a bit of that in some of the work somewhere, some of that magic. Which
Yeah.
shed
Well,
some light on.
now you're making me think. I'm going to try and write a song like that. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, brother. Love talking to you.
No worries, mate. Thank you for having me.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.